Hello and welcome to Garden Naturally with Green Fingertips with me, Josie Rainbird, your natural gardening coach. Today I would like to talk to you about how to make the best use of limited space in your garden. So we're going to be talking about vertical planting, we're going to be talking about succession growing, and we're going to be talking about growing efficiently and thinking outside the box when it comes to best use of space in your garden. So if this interests you, I keep on watching. So space can be, especially with modern gardens, space can be a very valuable commodity. So learning to make the best use of space in a small or compact garden, a very small footprint garden, is kind of important. So one of the main things that I think of, one of the first things I sort of think of when I think of a small garden and how to make best use of space is a container garden. So there's a whole variety of different plants that you can grow just in containers that grow quite happily in containers and don't need to be planted out in your garden. Now you can create a vegetable patch in containers. You can grow fruit in containers. You can grow all your bedding plants and trees and shrubs and climbers and all sorts of things in containers, and they will be perfectly happy. Container gardening tends to need a bit more care, just a little bit more care and maintenance. They need a bit more watering because they haven't got the garden, if you like, to store water for them. So the water tends to drain through the compost, and then they can't reabsorb it from anywhere. So you tend to have to water the plants more often, but there are ways around that as well. You may need to feed and refresh the compost every now and then as well. So usually at the end of each season, you can top dress or you can mulch the pots to then refresh the compost. You could also feed them as you go through the summer months. But if you've only got limited space and there's limited ways you can garden, then there's always a way around it. When growing in a limited space, succession planting is a very space conscious and effective way of growing vegetables in a small space. So I succession grow a lot of my salad veg and sort of summer growing vegetables. So this helps me to have smaller crops and more often for longer periods throughout the season, rather than one whopping crop that I've got to harvest all at once and then eat and hopefully try and store in some way, and you end up wasting it, and it never really works for us doing it that way. So I succession grow. So there's many different vegetables that you can grow this way. We have good success with growing lettuces this way because it means that we can keep cropping them, and every, say, 6 weeks or so we're re-sowing and re-harvesting more and more, so we can make them last throughout the season. And I do this with, as I say, with carrots and spring onions as well, to allow the first set to grow. I have done a video on succession cropping, which I'll tag for you at the end, so you can check that out as well. But it's a really good way of doing it. It's a good way of using sort of best use of space and preventing any waste as well when you're growing lots of vegetables. If you are growing in a smaller space, you want to be using the ground space that you've got as well as the height space that you've got. So by growing in terraced pot containers or in hanging baskets, this makes really good use of height as well as ground width. You could also grow fruit and vegetables this way as well. There's various different sorts of strawberries that you can grow in hanging baskets. You can grow some really nice cherry tomatoes and various different sorts of tomatoes in hanging baskets, and even blackberries as well. Key things to think about when you are growing in limited space is taking care of the soil, taking care of managing the soil that you've got, whether it's in containers or whether it's in a raised bed or in a small flower bed in your garden. The soil is key because this will prevent you having to maintain your plants so much. It will give the plants exactly what they need. Wouldn't have to maintain it as much. So look after your soil. This will also help with your watering as well. So if the soil is good and it's a good absorption and it holds good nutrients, this will prevent you having to water the garden so often and have to feed your plants. So this will save you time and money, which is nice. Think about what you're planting and where. If you've got a tree that you want to plant in your garden, or if you're growing it in a container, think about how it's going to want to live. If it's going to grow to, 25 foot tall over probably 5 years, maybe it's not the best plant to be growing in a container, just saying. So look for plants that will suit the situation you're in and will actually be able to look after themselves a little bit rather than having to ask you to care for them all the time, and actually suit the situation. Try and find plants as well that complement each other. Companion plants, if you like. Plants that can climb up each other. If you've got climbing plants, if you've got clematis plants, or anything like that, or honeysuckles. If you've got plants that are tall and strong, you can always use these as your structure. So if you've got limited space and you can't fit in any trellis or fencing or anything like that that can support these climbing plants, use what you've got. If you've got, as I say, if you've got strong trees or strong shrubs, Grow them up, grow the climbers up and through these plants. They will be natural support, and you'll be making the best use of what you've got, resources you've got at hand, and the space that you've got available as well. So this is a really good way of making best use of your space. A really good way of, along the same lines as succession growing, a really good way of growing vegetables in a small space, or even flowers in a small space as well, really. Growing and interplanting in your garden is a very effective way of using space. Don't worry about, if you've got a vegetable patch, don't worry about having to keep your vegetables in one area and your flowers in another. If you're limited on space, you do what you need to do. There is no rules in the world against planting your vegetables in with your flowers at all. No rules in the world at all. This will actually go a long way to supporting your garden. It will attract in the beneficial insects as well to then look after your flowers and your vegetables, so you might get a better crop out of it, and they will use different nutrients up as well, so they will support each other, and you'll get more from your garden than having them restricted to particular areas. So this is a much better use of the space. So hopefully these tips have helped you, and if you are struggling with limited space in your garden, check out this video I've got right here on succession growing and how to make best use of your space for your vegetable patch. If you want to see more videos from myself, from Gardening Naturally with Green Fingertips, click the subscribe button right here to be told when my next video is coming out. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. See you later.